All right. Well, the Ravens have just signed Mark Andrews to a surprise extension out of nowhere. We break it all down coming up here on an instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome in to the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here today on this Wednesday instant reaction edition of the show. Kind of out of nowhere. Thanks for making us a part of your day. And also, if you're an everyday or a first-time listener, or if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you for all of your support. Well, wasn't necessarily expecting to do this right now, but here we are. The Ravens have signed Mark Andrews to a surprise extension out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere. And we're going to have to talk about it, break it down, obviously from the Andrews perspective, from the Ravens perspective. And then, of course, this is a twist from what a lot of people expected. So what it does mean for the future of Isaiah Likely, as well as Charlie Kolar, because you knew that entire tight end room were scheduled to be free agents before this Andrews extension. So again, appreciate everybody for being here. We have 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage each and every single day in some way, shape, or form here on Locked On Ravens. I want to tell everybody today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. All right, Mark Andrews came out not that long ago, about 20, 30 minutes ago at this point. The Ravens have signed Mark Andrews to a 3-year, $39.3 million extension that includes $26 million in guaranteed money. Now, of course, the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to go over to tight end contracts and compare that, because right now, Andrews, his deal was $14 million per season. Obviously, 39.3 is a shade over $13 million per year over 3 years there. So he gets a little bit of a discount in terms of average annual value for him. It'll slot him right under Cole Kmet. It'll be over Cole Kmet and right under David Njoku in terms of current tight end contracts. It's an interesting move. Andrews, over the course of his career, we know how reliable and how steady he has been for Lamar Jackson, obviously, particularly in the regular season. He has had some moments in the playoffs that, he'd certainly like to have back. But look, you can't deny Andrews has had an incredible career to this point. He's been a Raven through and through. For the course of his career, 473 receptions for 5,862 yards and 56 touchdowns. Just unbelievable production for him over the course of his Ravens career. This is his age 30 season. He turned 30 about 3 months ago, I believe. So he'll be 31 by the time, right around next season when that starts. And this will go through 31, 32, and obviously 33. But it does create a couple of other different conflicts with the Ravens and their tight end group, which we will talk about a little bit more here with Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar. I think that the first thing that I think about with this extension is that it is not a small amount of money here. And there was always going to be a conversation about Mark Andrews versus Isaiah Likely, what each brings to the table. But I think the reality of the situation for Andrews is, despite, this year, Zay Flowers has been the target share demon for the Ravens this year. I mean, he has dominated target share, dominated receptions. That's been something that usually has been Mark Andrews. This year for Andrews in the receiving game, he has 52 targets, 37 receptions, 332 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So, we're in week 14. Admittedly, for Mark, that's not great production, and he's played in 12 games, obviously, so he's not missed a game this season. But the touchdown production is fine. He leads the team in touchdowns right now, so that production is still there. We know through Lamar and Andrews, that trust and that connection is there. But essentially, for the Ravens, between Andrews and Likely, Andrews has the shorter shelf life here. And that's kind of what it is when you have a player like Isaiah Likely, who is 25 years old. Andrews, again, like we mentioned, going to be 31 by right around the time next season starts. And look, in no way, shape, or form am I calling Mark Andrews a bad player. I think he's an incredible tight end still. It's just the conversation of what fits both your present term vision and your future vision better, short term and long term better. And we know that Isaiah Likely has kind of had to stay in the shadows behind Mark Andrews. And, we'll talk more about the messaging of Isaiah Likely on tomorrow's show and kind of what that looks like about the message the Ravens are going to send. We'll talk about it here too as well, obviously. But 39.3 over 3 seasons. Look, the way that the tight end market is moving, I feel like the Ravens, my theory here, and I might be wrong, I might be right, and you can agree with me or disagree with me in the chat. I'm curious actually to know how many people agree or disagree here. I think the Ravens feel like they have so many players they have to re-sign in free agency, and they know they're going to have to let some of them go. And although I believe Isaiah Likely has lost himself some money this season, there are a lot of tight end needy teams that probably will see the production he had before this season and the game that we just saw him have against the Bengals, albeit minus the fumble. That part wasn't good, but we saw some of that potential. Likely just led the team in receptions. Or I think it was definitely yards. I think it was receptions too, if I'm not mistaken there. But regardless, he had his best game of the season. And essentially what this does tell me, and we'll get into a little bit more in the second part of the show here, but what this does tell me is the Ravens have chosen Isaiah Likely, have chosen Mark Andrews. I'm so used to saying that because I thought that's what was going to happen. They have chosen Mark Andrews, in my opinion, over Isaiah Likely. So I think that is the right decision. I've been pretty consistent in saying it should have been Likely, so I'm going to say no. But that doesn't mean that Andrews still can't help this team over the next 3+ seasons. Now, I'm curious to see how the structure of this deal ends up looking. Is this really a 3-year deal, but it's a 2-year deal with an out after the 3rd season? What's the, guaranteed money spread out like? We know it's $26 million there, but, I just, the thing that a lot of people, and I see a lot of people talking about it in the chat right now, is, what is this going to look like? Because I've outlined the nightmare scenario before here. I've done it before where with Likely, who needs a tight end right now? The Bengals. Who needs a tight end right now? The Chiefs. Well, maybe next season, not right now. Kelsey's still playing really well, but the Chiefs, if Kelsey retires, there are a lot of tight end needy teams out there and Ravens competitors too that could use a player like Likely on their team. Now, it's the same side of the coin for Andrews, where if the outline in the scenario is they were going to keep one of the two and let the other one walk, well, you can have that same conversation about Andrews if he wasn't the one to get the extension. But with the Ravens situation and knowing they had to figure out their entire tight end room, Travis Jones, guys like Chidobe Awuzie is going to demand more money. There are a lot of other players down the pipeline they have to figure out, like Zay Flowers. Obviously this season, there are a few other players that we know are going to be higher up on their priority list, like a Tyler Linderbaum potentially, for example, et cetera, et cetera. They were always going to have to lose one or two of these big pieces. But when you have a player who has the athletic upside of Isaiah Likely, it's very rare that you can find a player like that who has had the instant contributions that he has had. And I think if Andrews was not in Baltimore, would have already probably established himself as a top 5 tight end. And that question is going to be answered whether he stays in Baltimore or leaves. So I'm not saying anything is set in stone here. There is still it is a very wild and low chance. I'd be floored. I mean, I'm shocked by this. I'd be on the ground. I'd be like, I'd have to fall over during the stream if they signed Likely now after they signed Mark Andrews. So, Andrews himself is going to still help. He is still a positive player. He is still important to this offense. And we know that the chemistry that he and Lamar Jackson have is second to none. We also know that talent-wise, both these guys, all three, Kolar included, are extremely talented players in some similar ways and some different ways. But I think we can also admit that Likely's had a disappointing year this year. Andrews, outside of the touchdowns, has had a disappointing year after starting slow and then coming around after, the year that he had. It was a career high in touchdowns for him with 11. But at the end of the day, I'm surprised. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I am surprised. Now, I think at this point in their careers, Mark Andrews is the more trustworthy player than Isaiah Likely. But obviously that does come back to present versus future, and you have to weigh both with this team. right now. And you have to wonder with Andrews being 30 years old. I know 30 is that age that you kind of worry about for running backs in a lot of different cases of like, oh, boom, 30 years old. Tight end wise, I'm curious to see because again, like Travis Kelce is way older than Andrews. How is Kelce like 36 right now? Travis Kelce? He's up there. He's 36. So it's not necessarily a one-to-one comparison. Kelce, his stats, because I want to go over those, just talking about him. And again, two different players, two different situations, two different offenses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Kelce had some of the best years of his career, when he was 30. I mean, he had his best year touchdown-wise when he was 33, scored double-digit touchdowns again during his age 31 season. So it's not like you hit that age 30 mark and all of a sudden, like, boom, you're declining, you're done. But there are going to be those conversations for sure because, Father Time is undefeated. And with Mark right now, he right now is the player that I think you trust more than Likely because Likely hasn't been able to put it together over a full season. And part of that is opportunity, part of that is injury, et cetera, et cetera. But long-term wise, I really feel like Likely has an opportunity to figure this thing out, whether it be in Baltimore or with a different team. And much like we saw with the Roquan Smith versus Patrick Queen debate, and the answer there obviously was Roquan in that situation, I thought the general consensus, it's clear the general consensus was Likely at the beginning of the season, but even I had said on a stream, a couple of weeks ago, I think, I'm like, I would still sign Likely. That'd still be the guy I'd choose. But I think that conversation has probably gotten a lot more close because of what has happened with Likely this season. So, man, I'm still trying to gather myself, still trying to figure out what I'm trying to say here. And it's tough because I would have, and I'm not saying it's over again. I'm not saying anything's set in stone until it is, but I would have loved to see the progression. But now again, like, we'll talk. Actually, this is a good part to go into a break because I want to talk about this in the second part of the show. There's a matter of like, do the Ravens want Likely? But at this point, does Likely want the Ravens? So be sure to stay tuned. We have plenty coming your way on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Aura Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it. So when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. And there are so many people you can gift this to: grandparents, parents, newlyweds, anyone who loves photos. And there are endless uploads of pictures and 30-second videos through the Aura app. You can add a personalized message right inside the frame so the gift feels thoughtful the moment it's opened. And packaging comes gift ready, no price tag, no wrapping needed. Huge win. For a limited time, save on a perfect gift here by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code LOCKEDON. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Moving along here, Locked On Ravens Instant Reaction Edition. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, instantly reacting to the Ravens' surprise extension for Mark Andrews, 3 years, $39.3 million, 26 guaranteed. And it's looking like they have chosen him over Isaiah Likely. So thanks for being here, tuning in on this Wednesday evening. We're actually going to be back here in like an hour to do the Locked On Ravens squad show with myself, Sam and Joker, and former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. So we're going to be talking about this in even more detail, talk about all the details with it. And of course, we'll have our regular show tomorrow. We have the regular show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. And of course, we have the squad show, instant reactions like this. We have instant reactions after games. We have watch alongs, et cetera, et cetera. Man, I just, I'm still in shock. Let's do this. Let's grade this deal. Let's grade this deal. So if you're in the chat live with us, or maybe you're watching this after the fact, or if you're in audio form listening, be sure to message me on social media. You can find me over there, CashRecord34, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. What is your grade for this move? A, B, C, D, or F minus, or A++. You can go any which direction you want to. I think so. The value of the deal itself, I think, is not great, but not terrible. Like, I think it's fine because Andrews, you have to factor in the age. It's still a decent amount of money for a tight end here, but the market is going to explode, I think, over these next couple of seasons and I think likely is going to factor into that. So I think it's fine, okay with the money. In terms of them choosing Andrews over likely, I still would have probably chosen likely, but you can't, we can't sit here and say that Andrews isn't going to help this team out over the course of this extension. He's still an incredible tight end. And I think, again, some of those playoff moments have clouded some people's vision about who he is. And I get it. Playoffs are important. You have to step up in the playoffs. That is a blemish on Mark Andrews' record that he absolutely needs to fix. And it is something you factor it in, right? But in the regular season, over the course of his career, he has been there for the Ravens, and I think he will continue to be there for the Ravens. So honestly, not knowing what happens to likely, and again, I think we all have an idea what's happening to likely here, but not knowing what's happening there, I'm just going to give it a C. I'm just straight up, I'm in the middle. I'm completely torn on this. I wanted likely to stay in Baltimore. I don't think that's the case anymore, and that hurts me. But it's not like the Ravens are paying a player that has not shown that they deserve money or is not producing in a couple of different ways this season. So I'm gonna say a C here, and I know that might feel like a cop-out answer to some people, but truly, I am completely split down the middle on this, where, again, Andrews is still gonna help them, but the likely factor does bring it down for me a lot. And it is a difficult thing to kind of get your head around, because moving into the second part of the show, the futures of Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar. Look, I don't know how much money Isaiah Likely has been asking for in extensions. I don't know what money he's asking for, and whether that number has gone up or whether that number has gone down. But even still, for a player with the athletic gifts that Likely has at his position, you can line him up at a bunch of places. He has improved as a blocker over the course of his career so far. I don't think it's in the cards anymore for the Ravens, and that is a very difficult thing. And also, I just saw a tweet from Bull Smolka, who does great work, and he said the Ravens made the tough call to move on from Todd Heap, the franchise record-setting tight end at age 30 in a cap cut. Andrews turned 30 this season. The Ravens signed him to a new 3-year extension. I also wonder how much influence Lamar Jackson had in this decision, potentially, where we know that Lamar Jackson does work in tandem with the front office and the coaching staff to some varying degree. And I'm curious and I don't know if they did or not, but I'm curious to see if maybe they approached Lamar or Lamar approached them and said, hey, how important is Mark to you? Or, who would you choose between Likely and Andrews? I'm curious. I would not be shocked if Lamar did have some input in this decision. I would not be shocked at all. I think, honestly, it's important that Lamar had some impact in this decision. So I'm hoping that he did. Now, am I shocked if Lamar did that he chose Andrews over Likely? Not really, if I'm being honest with you. We know the connection those two have had. They came in the league together in 2018. They've established chemistry that not a lot of duos can say that they established. So, at the end of the day, I think that if Lamar was asked about Andrews, I think that he probably signed off and gave his endorsement. And again, doesn't shock me whatsoever, but it's the cost of doing business in the NFL, is in order to keep great players, when you have a lot of them, you have to let others go. And I don't think, because again, this team goes beyond Mark Andrews. And while he's been incredible for them, we do know that Isaiah Likely is 5-6 years younger at this point. And with the Ravens' track record of continuously being competitive over the course of their franchise history, I think Likely is the better long-term asset. And, this just is what it is. And I see Cam asking, do you see a team offering Likely $15 million plus? Lamar definitely had an input. Mark has been a security blanket for his whole career. Do I think a team will offer Isaiah Likely? So right now, the teams who have a tight end that is signed to a deal worth $15 million per year or more. The 49ers with George Kittle at 19.1, Cardinals and Trey McBride at 19 million, Travis Kelce and the Chiefs 17.1, Hawkinson and the Vikings at 16.5, and that is it. We know the salary cap is going up. We know that money is going to be there for teams. And depending on how much money teams do have, they're going to look at a player in Isaiah Likely, and let me quickly pull up Isaiah Likely's stats here. Because again, part of what's likely is he just hasn't had a lot of opportunities. And again, the injury set him back, I think, a lot this season. He's still trying to find his footing. And it's the unfortunate part of being injured, coming back, and, Lamar goes down. Like, Isaiah, I think, has been dealt a pretty bad hand this season. Like, obviously, you can't control the injuries. That just stunk. And then, coming back and having to deal with Cooper Rush and all that and Tyler, et cetera. It's been tough. But Likely, his rookie season, he actually had his most targets during his rookie season where he put up 373 yards and 3 touchdowns. But then he was able to put together a back-to-back, a 5-touchdown campaign and a 6-touchdown campaign in 2023 and 2024, respectively. And ended up, he's a guy that does a lot for you. And I just think for me, the big question is for Likely, the Ravens, I think, have made a decision. I think they've chosen Andrews over Likely. I've said that probably a billion times already over the course of this stream. But does Likely want the Ravens? That's the other part. It takes two to tango. We know that it takes two to tango in the NFL. And we're going to talk about this more on the squad show and on the show tomorrow, but I want to mention it here first. First of all, the messaging this sends to Likely is, yeah, we're choosing him over you. And I think, if you're Likely now, knowing that Andrews is going to be in Baltimore for the next 3 seasons, I don't think, if I'm Isaiah Likely, I don't want to come back. I don't want to come back to Baltimore. They made their decision and he's going to make his. And I think that decision is he's going to go where he can flourish as a number 1 tight end. That opportunity, I think, was available in Baltimore before Mark Andrews signed his extension. But I mean, if I'm Isaiah Likely, I don't want to go to a place that is going to continue to cap me or re-sign, I guess, in a place that is going to continue to cap me. So that's, to me, that decision. And I see Cam makes a good point where I do believe that Likely and the Ravens were trying to work something out. I do agree with you there, Cam. But that number, and again, if Isaiah Likely was asking for wild money, then no, the Ravens shouldn't have signed him. But it still doesn't lessen the sting, I think, is the point that I'm trying to make here, where I think we all know the potential that Likely has with his athletic gifts and some of the things that we've seen from him, and he and Lamar have been establishing their own chemistry. Cam saying Likely is going to the Patriots, maybe. See, that's another. I thought about that because Hunter Henry, yeah, it's Chiefs, Bengals, Patriots. Who are other AFC teams that could use him that are maybe? Well, no, the Chargers, they've found their guy, it feels like. Maybe how long is Evan Ingram signed for in Denver? Honestly, hot take. I don't know when those guys are signed to extensions. Never mind. There are a lot of teams that could use a player like Isaiah Likely. There is no doubt about it. But it's going to be a place that he can be the unquestioned, maybe the Commanders. That Zach Ertz is 35. That's not an AFC team I know. I saw Carolina in the chat. They could be a team that could use a player like Likely. There are a lot of teams. Some of those teams that are rebuilding right now, they could use a player like Likely. So, again, we all knew this was the last year of them having this tight end room. That's why I think this year has stung so much for a lot of different reasons of them having, in my opinion, 2 top 10 tight ends in Andrews and Likely, and, them having some of the positions they did on the roster. Obviously, the roster issues that we talked about as well before the season have come up and just shattered a lot of that and have kind of messed with the roster a little bit here. But, to me, with everything I see, okay, I'm asking what's the max number I would have paid him for Likely. I would have given him something similar to Andrews, maybe a tick under. So, Andrews got, and I'm talking the first time around. So Andrews got 4 years, $56 million the first time around. I would have given Likely 4 for $50. I would have done 4 for $50 for Likely. Something 4 for $52, maybe. And I know that some people might think that's a little bit of an overpay, but again, the cap's going to go up. And I think in that same tune, the Andrews deal, it's expensive now, but it's not going to be as expensive in the next couple of seasons as that salary cap goes up and the market for the tight end continues to increase. And maybe, honestly, this is so out of left field. I'm not sure I believe it that I'm going to say it, but we saw Likely have, again, best game of his of his season, outside of the fumble against Cincinnati, did the Ravens just feel like, okay, he's already asking for too much and he's going to start hopefully contributing and it's just going to get to the point and maybe Andrews starts scoring again and that price goes up? So did they just want to get something now to secure something? I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, we know the value Andrews brings to the team, but we also know how valuable Isaiah Likely is as well. And it's tough because that decision was always going to be tough. I always thought it was going to be Likely and they were going to secure that long-term future there. But we're going to see. I mean, Andrews has, over the course of his Ravens career, earned everything. You know, obviously the playoffs have been tough. You know, he's been a guy that hasn't shown up in those moments, and that's been a blemish, like I said earlier in the show. But, you know, he's set franchise records. He's been there for Lamar Jackson. And, you know, I don't want his playoff blemishes to overshadow what he's brought to them over the course of his career. He's an incredible player. He's an incredible tight end. It's tough when you have a player like Isaiah Likely. You know what this reminds here? You're going to have to wait till the final part of the show for this because I have a hot take that I just thought about that I might be a little controversial. So be sure you stay tuned. We got a lot coming your way here on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, the defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. Right now, we know the Ravens and Steelers facing off in that big Week 14 matchup. Right now, over on FanDuel, the Ravens, they are 5.5-point home favorites. So if you like that number on FanDuel for the Ravens, be sure to check it out. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Moving along, it's Locked On Ravens. It is an instant reaction edition of the show. Mark Andrews signs an extension with the Baltimore Ravens, 3 years, $39.3 million. I saw a tweet from Garrett Ferguson. Shout out to Garrett. And he put out this back in January of Mark Andrews and his playoff numbers. In 8 playoff games, Mark Andrews, 39.4 yards per game, 0 touchdowns, 1 fumble, 8 drops, including that game losing 1 versus Buffalo. I'm not here trying to excuse that playoff performance or that playoff track record from Mark Andrews. We know what he brings to the team, but there are some clear weaknesses. You know, that's a difficult conversation that you have to have when it comes to a player like him. Is, you know, you're expected to be in the competition for Super Bowls every single season, and we're just going to figure things out here, right? That's the difficult part of the conversation with a guy like Mark Andrews, because we know how valuable he's been. But in those moments in the postseason, there have been rough moments, you know? And I think that this reminds me, and you know, you can tell me if this is a thing that should be a comparison or not. It reminds me a little bit, maybe just a little bit, of when the Ravens let Mike McDonald go and kept John Harbaugh around. Maybe not. I don't know. We will see. So right now, and I see Jonah Schaefer just put out the tweet that Mark Andrews, his contract extension right now ranks in the top 5 in average annual value. Again, I mentioned that. Oh, Jake Ferguson also, he got that deal that's just under Mark Andrews as well. But that's, you know, that to me feels like the Harbaugh McDonald thing a little bit to me, where again, like the Harbaugh conversation is so like in its own realm based off of all the reactions and opinions of Harbaugh himself. But, you know, Harbaugh and Andrews, you know, both, I think, good at what they do, but have some flaws. That is it good enough to take him to the next level? Andrews, I think, is a player. It's less like Harbaugh's flaws, I think, are less fixable. Like, I think there's a possibility Andrews can go out there and be clutch and kind of turn on that switch. With Harbaugh, I think you have to have other conversations about that. But we're gonna see. So look, I do want to extend congratulations to Andrews on this deal. I mean, again, I think he has earned it. He has deserved it with his play over the course of his Ravens tenure. If he can get that final, if he can get that final form of being a guy who can perform in the playoffs, I think you have a player that you've always wanted. And again, maybe it is too little too late. I'm not sure. But you also have to factor in Charlie Kolar as well, who I think has earned himself some money this season. So this Andrews deal, I think, is going to be less than what likely ends up making, probably average annual value wise. A team will, go out there and pay likely money. Like, he'll go out there and get his money. But I think for Charlie Kolar, that to me is now the biggest question, because I'm assuming likely he's not going to be in Baltimore next season. That is what it is. But to me, Charlie Kolar has been really important to this offense as well. Like, all three of these guys are important. We know that. But I think Charlie Kolar has shown his ability. And I think what this probably means, if you're going in order of money that I think guys are going to get, likely 1, Andrews 2, and Kolar 3, I think the Ravens probably prepared, and they had multiple scenarios where they either were going to re-sign likely or re-sign Andrews and Kolar for maybe around the same. Maybe Andrews and Kolar for a little more, because I think Kolar is going to earn some more money here. But I think they're playing. This is my guess. I don't know this for a fact, but my guess is they either were going to re-sign likely and let Andrews and Kolar go. They're going to re-sign Andrews and Kolar and let likely go. And I think this is the first step in that plan. So again, I think Kolar's important. I think Andrews still can help this team win football games. But I'm curious, if you had to choose, let's play this game too. And again, if you're live with us, if you're in the chat, if you're listening in audio form, everybody play. Let's see. Would you have chosen Isaiah Likely by himself, or would you have chosen Mark Andrews and Charlie Kolar? I think it's a really interesting debate. Really, really, really interesting. I just think that, I mean, in my opinion, I'd still, because the Ravens have had a track record, let's remember. The Ravens have a track record of picking tight ends in the mid rounds and having them turn out to be successful. So while it would hurt to lose Charlie Kolar, I think I don't know. I have to look. I see a couple of Andrews and Kolar, couple of Likely. I think everybody's split on this. If I had to choose, and I guess I'm going to have to here, aren't I? I don't know. I'd probably, Kolar makes it really tough. I'd probably go Likely. But again, there's no wrong answer in my opinion. Like, for Andrews and Kolar, the value is probably similar to Likely, but I think out of all three of those tight ends, Likely does have the most potential. So I'm probably like 51-49 there. If you choose Andrews and Kolar, I feel you. I hear you. I almost picked it, but I'm going to go Likely. So it's just unfortunate because like these rosters, like I love the way they're put together for the most part. We do know there are some flaws on this roster that were apparent this season, but it's just like, that's the tough part about it, where this is the last year we're going to see these guys, and guys are going to move on, go to different teams, get other opportunities. And like, I want all these guys to be successful. So at this point, we know that Lamar and Andrews have that connection and that chemistry together. And, the deal itself is not terrible to me. Like, the deal itself in terms of money, because the way that the tight end market is going to go up. And, I do think it also, like, with the way they draft tight ends, they can probably get a guy in next season. I'm not going to say he's going to be Isaiah Likely, but maybe he's going to have potential. I'm not sure. There's not necessarily replacing Isaiah Likely on this offense, much like there's not replacing Mark Andrews. I think both the guys deserve that respect of, like, they both are good in their own way. Obviously, Andrews has the track record in the regular season and whatnot, with the playoff stuff aside. So I think either way, you're losing a talented player here, but it's just it's a shock to me to see that they chose Andrews and didn't necessarily wait until the offseason to do it. But again, there were probably multiple different factors that went into that conversation. So, I'm going to enjoy these last couple weeks with the three of these guys here. knowing that Isaiah's probably not going to stay in Baltimore. Hopefully he can make a lot of big plays for Baltimore down the stretch, get into the postseason. And hey, who knows? Maybe win a Super Bowl. I mean, again, a lot's going to have to happen to have that happen. But at the end of the day, I think Isaiah's franchise tag number, because I see it, I think it was around $16 million, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a lot of money for 1 year. Obviously, with the extension, with the Andrews thing, they can spread that money out over the next handful of seasons, lessen the cap hit, and maybe give more opportunity to sign a couple more of these guys back to the team in 2026. And I see Needle saying likely could have never ran the Hurricane. Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe they just want the guy to run the quarterback sneaks, and that's why they secured him. So shout out to Mark Andrews. Tough for Isaiah likely, and we'll see what happens with Charlie Kolar. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're actually going to be back here in like 45 minutes with Locked On Ravens Squad Show, so we'll dive into this a little bit more, dive into the conversation about Andrews versus likely, what the Ravens should do from here, and a lot more. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form, follow along and subscribe in audio form, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.